So this next one, we pulled up here, it's a meta-analysis of prejudice reduction research, and it explains where we must better our understanding in relation to this research. And so essentially what authors did, they were asking the questions of what studies in the last decade exists regarding prejudice reduction and what are their focuses, how effective or accurate are the interventions and results of these studies, and then where should we improve prejudice reduction studies moving forward, and what areas should we pay special attention to. And in order to conduct this study, the authors performed this meta-analysis through 309 manuscripts selected out of 16,000 through several selection cycles of the authors and their focus criteria. The research criteria, it needed to include a specific intervention that might lead to prejudice reduction. And the manuscripts were coded and evaluated through statistical analyses and methodological and theoretical frameworks. And so essentially what this came out to was the authors found many areas that we should expand upon and many possible limitations or errors in a lot of these studies, which was interesting. They found that publication bias seemed to be present in a lot of the manuscripts evaluated, and not a lot of diversity in the areas studied or the participants evaluated was present. Specifically noted was the lack of true information available as it relates to implicit prejudice reduction. However, the authors did find that light touch interventions may be promising and should be studied further. And they discussed several very well done studies. One of them might have been actually even one of the studies that we went through a week or two ago about, let's see, it was a, let's see, this was back in October, but it was a study that we titled "Peace is not merely the absence of war, what the case of Abuja in Nigeria teaches us about workplace conflict." And it was essentially talking about different interview. They had different interviews, and they, let's see, they noticed that there were interreligious and interreligious divisions, fear, suspicion, stereotypes, insecurity, other major threats that to the relative peace. But essentially looking at, what does prejudice look like in this specific area? And so they pointed that one out as a positive study that was used. And I thought it was cool because we kind of had gone through it before at one point. And so the key takeaway from this essentially is that we all need to learn and grow in order to work well as mediators and peace builders. Learning from the many recent studies available is very helpful, but we also need to tie this into what we know about conflict resolution theory and be wary of areas that may need further evaluation before being implemented. And this is similar to a study that we had kind of last week in terms of looking at a specific area of research and looking at, all right, what are the limitations? What are the good parts? Like, what can we learn from this research field? And where can we grow? And I think this is kind of what this study is hinting at. Like, there's a lot of growth that we can go forward in conducting research about prejudice reduction. Although there are some studies that show certain interventions, and apparently this light touch interventions can lead to prejudice reduction, but that there's still some growth that we need to be doing to move forward. So that's what I've got for this one.
Do they expand on what encompasses a light touch intervention? I mean,
I'm going to check on that.
Yeah, I would imagine it just means something, maybe not as structured as opposed to kind of all the other discussions that we've had about when it comes to kind of these in-group, out-group bias situations, having more structured activities in place. And I wasn't sure, just reading this, I'm like, oh, is that kind of contradicting the having the more structured, or it could, I'm not sure. I'm just curious what is a light touch intervention?
Yeah, I'm going to look at that. I was wondering that as well. This is Natalie's study. Let me see. I imagine it would mean, I don't know. I have to see what, let's see.
Yeah.
Touch
And then also explain publication bias to me.
Yes. Hold on, I'm 1 second.
My thoughts on that, Tony, would be that the actual, so this was a meta-analysis, so they're looking at thousands of different studies, and they're saying that they saw bias even in the studies out there. So basically there's, you know, the studies that are being published and that are out there for everyone to see illustrate bias, right? So there's probably not a lot of studies on maybe performed by people of color. I'm not sure the specifics of it, but that's my take on publication bias.
Yeah, you're right, Sarah. It occurs mostly in academic research, and it occurs when the outcome of an experiment or research study influences the decision whether to publish it or not. And so, if they don't like the outcome, maybe they won't publish it, or if they do, then maybe they will.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So not necessarily on the person that the conductor of the research or the researcher themselves. It's not necessarily has to do with that.
Not necessarily, since I imagine these researchers go through journals. I imagine it's something related to that. Although I can imagine it could be the author themselves saying, I didn't get the result I wanted, and so we're going to pull it, or we're going to push it in anyways. I don't know, but I think it's more catered towards the publisher and than the author.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it also talks about there was not a lot of diversity in the areas and the participants. Yeah.
Right. And then the lack of true information available. I mean, so it almost sounds like people are just writing theories or, almost like essays and getting them published.
Sounds like confirmation bias too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. I mean, if it doesn't confirm a belief you already have, I'm not going to publish it.
I'm not going to put it out. Right.
I'll publish it if it does. If it proves Interesting.
Yeah. I'm having trouble accessing the study right now, but I'll send a definition over to you when I get it, probably after this meeting, if that's all right with you.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So as far as the key takeaways, I feel like it's basically letting us know that there's so much more, there's more out there that we might not be able to read about. So kind of taking everything with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah. So remaining curious, making sure, you're not, I feel like that could be one aspect of it. Don't be completely set in your ways, even though, there's some research out there to say that this causes this, or, I don't know. I think you're right though.